I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm joined today by Emmy winner Evan Peters to talk about Netflix's Dahmer monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And Evan, obviously taking on the role of Jeffrey Dahmer must have been a huge responsibility for you. But to start things off, I'd actually like to talk about another hat that you took on this project, which was that of an executive producer. Obviously, you had already been a producer on American Horror Story before this show, but this was your first time executive producing. So, why was it important to you to step into that role for this project? And what were you able to bring to the table as an executive producer?
Well, I think, it was I was really brought in after most of the scripts were written, and
Mm,
Ryan approached me with possibly playing the part, and I think I was very nervous about it, but I just sort of I said, I'm interested in doing it, but I do feel like it needs to be quite a tonal shift from the things we worked on before, and just really sort of stripping everything down. And it was really more of a kind of on-set creative producing, maybe more towards
mm,
sort of helping with picking the right the right props and wardrobe, and looking at this, just making sure and working very closely with our amazing DP Jason McCormick and all the
hmm
directors, and sort of helping that there was a through line of um, a very matter of fact kind of again sort of stripped down tone, and really sort of getting out of the way of the series, and letting the facts of the case sort of tell themselves. So that kind of played into the makeup and wardrobe. And initially we put a lot of makeup on, and even had blue contacts and things like that. And
mm,
I just felt like, we have the glasses. This isn't what the story is about,
right.
so it was really, um, really exciting to sort of have a say a little bit in what would be done in those areas. So that was really cool. And I got to thank Ryan for that opportunity to be collaborative with everybody on the set. And yeah, yeah, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, and I believe you said that when you came on board, most of the scripts had already been written, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So considering that you then kind of asked Ryan and the rest of the writers to go for this matter of fact, simplistic telling of the story, did they then go back and sort of do any rewrites, or how did they make sure to sort
Oh
of
no.
incorporate that? No,
No, no. Not that much power,
not that much.
just a little bit. It's just a
Just a
very
little bit.
tiny, just a little bit. Yeah.
Just a little
Yeah.
bit. But you've also sort of credited Kate Winslet's leadership on Mayor of Easttown as sort of
Yeah.
something you look up to as an inspiration. Was there anything about her leadership on the Mayor set that you kind of wanted to bring onto the Dahmer set, or something that you ended up emulating, or was that
Yeah,
something that was important?
I think her endurance, I think her
Mm,
dedication, and really staying in it the whole shoot. I mean, that shoot of Mayor of Easttown, I was constantly looking at her with just such awe and admiration, going, and how much endurance she has, and how dedicated she is. And I just thought, I have to really try to match that. I have to really try to do that, and really dig in. And she just did not stop. I was really impressed with that, and really looked up to that. So I tried to carry that through, just keep a through line again throughout the entirety of the shoot.
Yeah, and the mayor shoot was, obviously there was the interruption in between because of COVID and everything, so that must have been a stressful shoot. But this was also shot, during COVID, when guidelines were still very much in place, and obviously this is a very difficult story that you're dealing with here. So you had a lot of responsibility there. So the fact that you took it on, I think, is quite impressive.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
yeah,
Thanks.
of course. And to sort of, go back to that aspect of this being more of a simplistic, matter of fact retelling of this story, I think that really shows in your performance as well, because the way someone described it, I believe it's David Phillips of Awards Daily, they said that your version of Dahmer is sort of a dull blade, someone who's not charismatic, someone who's not fascinating, someone who's not smart. And I think he really hits the nail on the head with that. description. So was playing him like that sort of a deliberate choice of yours, or did that characterization kind of arise out of all the research that you did on him and all the footage that you watched of him?
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. Thanks to him for saying that, for you for saying that. Yeah, I think it was deliberate. I did try to sort of dull him down a lot. I think it was in the writing. I think that it
Mm,
also was in a lot of the research, a lot of watching him, watching all the footage that I could find of him and listening to him speak
hmm.
about what he did. He's so detached from it that it's a very strange thing to hear. I tried to keep in mind that all of these recordings and are after he's been caught and he's
Right.
sober and possibly medicated. So there's sort of a working backwards to try to figure out sort of how he behaved. And I think
Right.
just reading about it and listening to the facts and how he spoke about it was sort of helpful in trying to make that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sort of talked a lot about the physical preparation that you did, for getting into the role, for getting his posture right, and everything about that. You've talked a lot about that during your press tour for this. But I'd actually be also very interested in your emotional preparation for the role, because I know that you wanted to make sure that Jeffrey wasn't born a monster, that there was kind of like an innocence to him before he started committing all these crimes. And I know that judgment doesn't serve any character, and actors always talk about that judgment is not something that is really part of their process. But you're still a human being, so I kind of assumed that judgment was inevitable at the beginning. So what did you kind of do to transcend that judgment so that you could tap into that innocence that you wanted to explore?
Good question. I think it was really, listening to him speak about how he didn't really understand why he even wanted to do what he did. So it really his understanding that it was wrong and self-medicating with alcohol. And I think that it really just it develops and deteriorates into a compulsion mixed with his alcoholism, and he just can't control it and he loses himself completely. And I think he didn't start that way, so I think it was important to help try to map out that arc and that deterioration, and that was very helpful, especially in the younger years when he
Right.
hasn't committed any of these atrocities. I think it was intense to play. I think one thing that we found in the beginning, sort of, I was personally quite emotional through some of these things that we were shooting,
Mm,
and Carl Franklin, our first director, very smartly and suggested, why don't we have some of that emotion, right? But then
mm,
swallow it, keep it down so that we see what kind of bubbles up. And that seemed to feel right because what I was doing before was me and not this, completely foreign entity. Anyway, that was very helpful in trying to figure out the different levels of what he was going through and the sort of psychological emotional side.
yeah. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that about like sort of swallowing the emotions, because I talked to Penelope Ann Miller yesterday, who plays your on-screen mother, obviously, and she
Yeah,
mentioned that scene when Joyce, leaves Jeffrey at home, when she sort of leaves with his brother, with David,
yeah, yeah.
and she said that while you were filming that scene, she could sort of see a tear in your eye, um, as you were basically doing the scene over and over again. So I think it's really interesting. Was that one of those moments where you sort of wanted to swallow the emotions, or was that something that just came about naturally?
I think it's a combo of both. I think it was, sort of again, the way that Jeffrey Dahmer reacts in a situation is completely different from how you or I would react. I
Yeah.
think, and I think finding somewhere in the middle there of sort of how I was feeling in the circumstances,
Hmm.
and then sort of swallowing that down, and then I think having that come up in that scene. But in that scene, he's very young, and that's sort of the
Yeah.
beginning of everything happening. So there is room to have a little bit more emotion and maybe more connected to his feelings and things like that. So it was, uh, yeah, she was great in that scene. It was really, really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolutely a heartbreaking scene. And to what you just said, the question I kept asking myself while watching the show and even after watching it, and I've had a lot of conversations with people about it, is, at what point did Jeffrey hit a point of no return? Penelope said that she does believe it's like this moment where, where she and both she and Lionel leave him at home to fend for himself because it's after that he kills his first victim, Stephen Hicks, of course.
Yeah.
And you sort of just alluded to the fact that you also kind of believe that that was sort of where he hits the point of no return, or where the turning point of the story is. Could you elaborate a bit on that? Do you really think that that's where there was no point of return, or?
I think it's just so complicated, and it's really hard to say for sure. I do feel like that is a pivotal moment in his
Yeah.
life, and I think that room, or rather, abandonment in a way,
Yes.
allowed for all of this stuff to fester, mixed with the alcohol, and then sort of crossing over that moral code that we all have.
Yeah.
And then I think when he um, commits his first murder, I think I mean, there's no going back after that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just, yeah. So,
Yeah, and that's one of the most interesting aspects of this show. I mean, obviously, one of the great aspects is that we get multiple perspectives, but I also think we get sort of an exploration into his devolution into a murderer. We get to see what happened in his childhood in a way. We get to see how the turbulence of his parents' marriage, how all of that sort of impacted him. And I think, like you said, it's very complicated, and all these factors kind of, come together to create this turning point in his life, this very devastating, horrific turning point.
yeah,
So
there's no going back after that. Absolute tragedy.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And sort of come back to this narrative arc that you kind of latched onto, this deterioration, this worsening compulsion, worsening alcoholism. You know, for I imagine that that must be a very difficult thing for you to go in and out of as an actor, especially on a show like this that doesn't have a linear story structure, and that is just constantly jumping back and forth in time. I mean, you play him across what, 17 years of his life. Um, and I know that you've credited your hair and makeup team for sort of keeping you on track. But is there
Yeah.
anything else that you did that helped you sort of slip in and out of timelines for any episode? Did you have like a spreadsheet, or how did you pull that off?
Yeah, I did. I had an amazing timeline. Our script supervisors were amazing and very helpful for
Mhm.
that. I think it was just a lot of making clear choices about how he would carry himself. I kind of,
Right.
voice changes, weight changes, a little bit of things like that were very helpful to try to make sure that I was in the right time period at any given time of shooting, because it got a little chaotic there. So, sorry, what was the question again? What was
No,
the?
no. Basically, what you
Yeah,
basically already answered it. But you were talking about how how it's a deterioration, that means basically
yeah,
gets worse and worse and worse. So I imagine that it's very difficult for you to show up on set for a given scene. I mean, as because you jump back and forth between timelines. Even
yeah.
within an episode. So I must imagine that it was difficult for you to know exactly what headspace Jeffrey was in a given scene. So was there anything?
Music is very helpful for stuff like
Music.
that. The music of the time period, or things that sort of make you feel a certain way, or whatever the character is going through at any given moment. I find that can be incredibly helpful to put you in the right frame of mind.
Mm,
So stuff that you're listening to in the 90s era is completely different from the
right.
70s era when he's 17 years old. So playing around with that, I think, was really helpful. And of course, the wardrobe and makeup and
Right.
hair, I mean, just really unbelievable what they did. And again, making sure we were in the right time period on any given day was quite a challenge, going back and forth. And scheduling that out properly was really a feat too. So yeah, but it was all, everybody was sort of up to the challenge of working together on that. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And yeah, I guess a lot of actors always talk about the fact that, physicality really helps them sort of get into the mindset, right? If you have, because as you said, we have different hair in different time periods, is, different weight. Did all of that really help you find your way into the character as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that was massive. Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, trying to trying to match that. I mean, he's um, much skinnier when he gets caught than when
Hmm.
he's younger. And then, of course, we're shooting out of order a little bit, so the scheduling of it was all
Yep.
very challenging. And then in episode 3, he's working out a lot, so I was trying to do that. But I think I did my I tried my hardest to make them a little bit different, and I think that
Hmm.
that was very helpful for me as well to know again where he was at, emotionally. If you sort of can tap into it, sometimes it's better to work from the outside in
Absolutely.
instances like this, so it can be helpful to just make sure you're on the right track. Again, it can get pretty chaotic during the shooting, so.
Yeah, I could absolutely imagine. That was what I was thinking when I was watching the show. I was like, oh my God, there's so many timelines. I mean, a lot of shows have been doing this recently where they
Yeah.
just jump back and forth between in time, even within an episode. Um, but I know that on Mayor, that you actually started getting in the habit of writing a lot because that's what Kate would do. Did you carry that into over into this project as well? Was there a lot of writing that you were doing? And if so, how did that help facilitate your process? And did that help you get into character as well?
Yeah, I mean, especially on this one, I think it was incredibly important to continue to check in with myself and see where I was at, so that I could figure out how to sort of make that match where the character was at any given day of shooting. So it was a really very helpful process, to free write is really what it is. It's not,
Yeah.
I'm not, but it's yeah, it's just sort of getting out all these different things that you think about throughout the day, or whatever you're going to need to think about that day. It could be a preparation as well. Journaling.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, so did you do it from like your perspective? Would you write from your perspective? Would you write from Jeffrey's perspective, or was it sort of a mixture of that?
It's a mixture. It's definitely a mixture. It's sort of, um, yeah, it can be a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. And I know that for you it was very difficult to sort of recover from this project and to recover from this role. I mean, Niecy Nash Betts, who plays Glenda Cleveland on the show, said, she didn't meet the real Evan until afterwards. So what has that time been like for you, after you finished shooting? I know that you're very proud of the project and of the work, but how has this time, the time after that, how has that been for you? How has the project marinated in your head and that entire experience?
It's been good. It's been challenging, and it's been great to get to know Nisi. For real, it's been awesome. And talking to Richard about Step Brothers, and just kind of getting back into the groove of things. Yeah, going back to St. Louis and seeing family, and just
Mhm.
sort of going into the light. It was really a marathon on this one. I tried so hard to sort of see what my limits were.
Mhm.
I mean, there's been so many actors before me who I look up to, who have raised the bar so high that
Mhm.
it feels impossible to match it, let alone try to surpass it. So it's kind of like, okay, well, what can I do? What should I try to do here? How far can I go? What can I do? So I pushed myself to see what my limits were, and I really did learn. I was like, well, here's what I can do, here's where I can't, what I can't do, and then
Mm.
what can I work on. So this time has really been about sort of what can I work on,
Mhm.
to apply for the next project, whatever that is. And I'm searching for and trying to get into something that's a little lighter,
Yep.
a little more levity. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
need to get you. We need to get you some kind of comedy for sure as your next thing,
Yeah, yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be really
right?
fun. Yeah.
I know one of our editors here is really stumping for a Mayor of Easttown prequel called Zabel of Upper Darby. Um, that That was a fun character, right? I mean, tragic,
Thank you.
tragic ending and sort of a
Yeah.
tragic life, but that would be hilarious, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, Evan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today through your process. I think that's really fascinating to listen to. You know, everything about the journaling and just the way you found your way into this character. So, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you, Luca. I appreciate it.